Recording now.
Okay. Well, if everyone can just mute themselves, I think that would be a really great start. So good afternoon, everybody. My name is Elise Hatton. I'm the Rockhampton Regional Council Smart Hub Business Manager, and I'm delighted to welcome you to our October Lunch and Learn. I cannot believe how quickly this year is going and that we're already in October. Now, as you all probably are aware, this is our Mental Health Week. And our topic for today, it really fits nicely into Mental Health Week. And I've heard so many people say that, you know, when someone is struggling and they voice that they're struggling, often we feel like we don't know how to respond and we don't know how to facilitate those conversations so that we can get a good outcome in the end. And that's what these lunch and learns are generally about. It's about sharing information, tips and tricks that can help you in a practical way solve problems. And the problem that we're solving today is, what do I say if someone does mention something to me in a conversation? How do I respond if I'm not trained as a counsellor? Now, we have someone amazing to share this information with us today. Our presenter for today is the incredible Linda Oakford. She's, of course, from Symmetry Australia, and she has a myriad of experience in this area. If you've all registered for the Lunch and Learn, so I know that you've all read the marketing. So instead of just telling you about her background again, what I'd like to share is something quirky about Linda. So here is the thing. Linda and her husband are getting ready to become grey nomads and travel all across Australia in a bus. But Linda has one small or maybe large problem, and it's this. She has 3 cats and a blind dog, and they fight like cats and dogs, and she has to get all of her pets into the bus with her. So that's a bit of a conundrum and probably something that you work on a lot in your spare time, Linda. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your knowledge around what do we say if we're not trained and we don't feel confident in how to manage challenging conversations. So I might just hand over to you in a minute. The last thing that I will say is, if we have any questions, please feel free to type them in the chat as we go. I think the format we usually favour is I'll allow Linda to do her whole presentation, and then at the end we'll ask all the questions that we've accumulated throughout the presentation. However, I will keep an eye on the chat, so if there's a question that Linda really needs to clarify something, then I'll interrupt her presentation and ask the question. But if there's no clarification question, please feel free to type as the questions come to you while she's presenting, and then at the end we'll get to all the questions. So again, thank you so much, Linda, for joining us. Everyone will keep themselves on mute while you present, and then after we'll get to the question time. I'll hand over to you.
Lovely, thank you so much. A lovely introduction. I'll just do a screen share here and hopefully I'll get it all to work. I will admit I am nervous doing this today, mainly because of technology. It's not something I'm awfully familiar with or confident with. So I'll do my best, but if something goes wrong, please do let me know. So here we are. What do I say to that? I'm not a counsellor. So as the introduction stated, when we're in business, of any kind of business really, we build relationships. So one of the points of building relationships is building trust. So there's a large element of trust that's already coming with building that relationship with our customers, whatever that type of business may be. In some instances, our customer may very well have built a relationship and a trust with us prior to us even engaging with this customer. Let's say, for example, like myself as a hypnotherapist or a counsellor, there's lots of, or even an educator, there's lots of research that people will do to be able to then make their first appointment to even come and see us. So the relationship and the trust has already been built. So some of the, barriers of opening up to people have already been reduced because in their mind, relationship has already started. In that instance, what can sometimes occur is we feel people start to overshare quite early, especially in a relationship where we're seeing it from just a professional point of view. So if someone trusts you, they're going to feel more comfortable opening up about personal issues. And if we are working in a relationship that we might be talking about what they want for their house, maybe they're moving, perhaps we're looking at finances. We don't necessarily have to be talking to this person with a goal of a personal relationship. However, we are entering into people's lives. So we do hear things, and if we're not trained, we can be very unsure how to respond. So hopefully everyone's able to hear me okay. I just want to quickly go through what is mental illness, given that we're presenting this during the Mental Health Week. So when we're talking about our clients on, you know, Are You Okay Day, and this relationship building that we're talking about, not necessarily this person will have a diagnosed mental illness, but they may. So it's on a spectrum for mental illness. You may have some people that have a diagnosed chronic mental illness. We're seeing them at a time of health, when they're getting some stuff done around their home, or, you know, putting their finances in place, whatever that may be. So just to quickly go through what a diagnosable condition is, if we're talking about mental illness, it's the signs and symptoms of a mental illness will affect a person's thinking, behaviour, and their emotions. So it actually fits into every part of their life. So whatever your business is, it's more likely that you will be having an interaction with someone's thinking, something they're doing, or something that they're feeling. So there's a high likelihood that we will come across people that could have mental illness. And given that 1 in 5 people between the ages of 16 and 85 have the signs and symptoms of a mental illness in any given year, that's another high likelihood. So another area of mental illness that we often don't think of is the physical ailments. So if we're talking to someone, let's say we have a financial business and we know this person's under a lot of stress, we may be hearing things like headaches, stomach aches, muscle aches and pains. That could also be signs of depression, anxiety, those sorts of mental illnesses also. So just to keep in mind that mental illness affects every part of a person's life, and it is a diagnosable condition. So what do I say? So I want to take us back to a situation where we are in a relationship with our client. We may be on the phone, we may be on Zoom, we may be sitting having a conversation with them. They drop something and we hear, okay, pretty sure there's something I'm supposed to be able to say to that, or even the answer to the "Are you okay?" No, that's the answer we're receiving back. And we sometimes say, I have no idea where to go with that. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say. And this isn't my primary role. So first, we don't have to say anything. So one of the beauties of the role of personal interaction with another human is that you allow them to talk. So first, saying nothing, but we become present. So if anyone's heard of mindfulness, mindfulness brings us into the moment. It increases empathy. It increases our connection. So if we can just drop in, even if we're sitting having a conversation with the client, and notice our senses, what that does immediately is provide a non-judgmental attitude, and our person feels validated and heard. So we could be absent-mindedly looking up something on the computer, and our client is talking in the corner, and then they've dropped a bomb of some emotional or thinking or behavioural response. We need to respond to it. First thing, stop. Notice our person. Perhaps look, what's the colour of their eyes? What colour are they wearing today? Take them in. What else am I feeling in the room right now? What can I hear? What can I smell? What can I sense? That's half your connection battle already won, for this person to feel, oh, I just got a connection with you. And then we don't actually have to say anything at the beginning. All we need to do is, at the very start, use their words. So we're engaging with them. So it's what we call minimal encouragers, that oh, wow, okay, geez, that's big. Those sorts of minimal ahas. Then we can start giving some paraphrasing and reflection. The ahas, minimal encouragers, allows this person to continue talking and feel heard and validated while we're doing our mindfulness drop into this situation. All we need to do in the beginning is to continue to use their words. So we're using paraphrasing, and we're using, oh, that makes you feel. We don't have to come up with anything new. So when we're starting to go, I have no idea what to say, what words do I use? Easy, use theirs. So you might say, oh, so you're saying this finance problem is giving you some really bad headaches and you feel there's a lot of anxiety. You say you are feeling really angry. I can hear that you must feel really angry right now. At that beginning, it's about that initial engagement, that initial rapport. Okay, so again, the reason behind that is they feel validated, they feel listened to. That's the beauty of it. We do not have to come up with anything new to say at all. Some point in time, though, we will have to say something. So we'll get to that in a minute. We can't just sit there the whole time going, and repeating their words after them. Will be put up for a mental health referral at that point as well. So when we do have to talk, what we do is we stay with their frame of reference. We stay with their worldview. So if their worldview right now is everything is Chicken Little and the sky's falling down, then that's what we stay with for a while. It's not our role as non-counsellors to try and change that at this point. So staying with their frame of reference, staying with their worldview might look something like this. You may have heard something and your person is saying there's domestic violence. So even if you are maybe in the building industry, you might be doing patch-up work on doors, you might be doing finance, all of those things. There's a lot of issues that may have a domestic violence feel to them when they're coming to see people in business. So we stay with their worldview. A lot of times our mind will go straight to, well, here's some advice. Here's some way that I could help you. Here's what I think you could do to make things better for yourself. Right now, that's not what this person is needing. We're needing validation and we're needing listening to. So you could say something along the lines of, that must be really hard when you still love them. That must be really hard when you've got kids in the relationship also. So we're staying with their worldview. So that's one of the examples. Another example could be, they're saying everything is everybody else's fault. Oh, if it weren't for child services, if it weren't for what the alcohol and other drug services want me to do, if it weren't for, all the other things that are going against them at this point in time. So staying with their worldview. Sounds like you disagree with what child services is doing. Sounds like you disagree with how the banks manage these situations. It sounds like, that kind of idea of staying with their worldview. So we've done that ahas. We've done that reflection back. Now we've thought we better actually say something. Whatever it is that we say as an input, not agrees with them, but stays at this point with their take on the world. So if they're saying negative things about their partner, sometimes we hear that in business. They might feel like they've got a friendship with us and they're like, oh, she's out with the girls again this weekend and I'm the one doing all the finances and keeping these appointments. That seems like a lot to put up with. Wow, that must be hard. Staying with their worldview. We're not fixing anything, we're not giving advice, and we're not changing anything at this point in time. Okay. So when I go through that kind of stuff, is staying with that person's worldview, I hear a lot of people go, but what if I really don't agree with that? What if that goes right against my grain? At this point in time, with the business relationship that we're talking about, you're not into counselling. We're going to go into congruence in a moment on staying with who you are, but we do ask that whatever your personal judgment is on the situation, we just pop it aside just for now. You're allowed your personal view on any of those little examples that I just gave. What I ask is, for the moment, you say, I will have my personal view later when I'm at home sitting having a beer and I can think it through myself. Right now, when I'm talking to this person who's in distress, I'll just keep my view to myself for a moment. However, what we do want to achieve is still being us. This person has trusted us to drop this bombshell at this point in time. So they feel they've got a relationship with you and your business. So there is a point to still being congruent though. So there's nothing wrong with saying, wow, I can't even imagine how hard that would be. I might have been through something similar, but it sounds like there's some differences for you. I can understand how you would be totally devastated by that. So we're always keeping with their worldview, but still maintaining who we are as well. We can always say, that sort of situation isn't true for me. So an example might be when someone is having a hard time in their relationship and they're very negative about their partner. We can always say, that must be really hard. I can't imagine what that would be like. It's not my life that I've had that kind of difficulty with a partner. So although we're staying with their worldview, we're also allowed to be who we are. So I hope that kind of clarifies those questions that I get sometimes, that, what if I don't agree? We can say, that's not in my experience. That's not what my thinking is, but it must be really hard for you. So they are the topic, not us. We don't go into our own life. If we've been through something exactly the same as we think this person is going through, we probably haven't, because they've done it from their worldview, not our worldview. So we don't go, oh yeah, look, I know exactly what you're talking about. I had this ex-husband that time, and then go into our story. So we always keep it on their topic. All right, so far, all we've done is go, aha, repeat what they've said, repeat how they feel, given them a couple of ideas of that must be really hard for you, and brought in a little bit of our own personality. We could be quite far into a conversation by now, and this person is feeling heard, they're feeling validated. But what next? So strength-based statements. We need to get this conversation back to our business conversation, the point of the reason that we're having this relationship with this person. So they're feeling heard, they're feeling validated. We've put in our own bit of congruence. Then we can say, there's always a strength that we've heard in that conversation that we've had with them. So we've been having a few chats, we've been saying this must be hard, da, da, da. There's something that they would have said there that can make you think they've actually got a strength. What I want to point out is this isn't just putting a silver lining or saying positive psychology and saying, well, look at the positives of this. Well, you're out of that domestic relationship now. The violence is gone. Good on you. Let's move on. There's a point in time where the person is still going to feel, but I've been through that. That was hard for me. And now you're just telling me to think positive. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with positive psychology. I'm saying at this point in time with where we are and the relationship that we have with this person, we just want to start looking at some of their strengths, and then I'll look at redirection in a second. So we may have heard something from their story or heard something from their personality. So here's one of the examples. Has there ever been a time in your life when this feeling of sadness wasn't as bad as it is now? That could be one of the examples, whatever the XYZ is that you want to pop in there. Dead man's question. This is a bit of a strange one, but people might say, oh, I would do so much better if I didn't drink as much. I'd love to be able to not drink as much and exercise more. So a dead person can not drink as much. What would a live person do? So what would you do instead? So you might say, oh, I've heard you say you'd love to get off the couch and stop drinking. But what would you actually do? So make it into a, what would a live person do? Not a, I would like to stop. I would like to be, that's all a not doing, if you know what I mean. So strength-based is more about bringing it into a doing. Have you ever felt like this before? What got you through it that time? So we're starting to draw on what are some of your strengths and some of the things that we can start to draw on to go, right, what I need to do now is get you back to those things. So if it was a really good GP, maybe you'd like to go see that GP again, and then we'll segue back into the reason that we're having this conversation originally with that person. So what got you through at that time? Would you consider looking at that again? If this person is going through a grief, we can ask, tell me a funny story about that person. Tell me how you met that person. Tell me what was life like living with that person. Because grief comes and hits us at the back of the head at the most inopportune times, doesn't it? We've all been there. We could be in a business meeting and suddenly we just start bawling our eyes out because something has reminded us of our person that has passed. So we've done the ahas, all those things. Just tell me one little quick story. Tell me a really nice situation that you had with that person, keeping in mind that might also be a pet. Sounds like you're really big-hearted. Who else have you helped? So they could be talking about all these things they do for others. And what are your thoughts on talking to someone about this? We're not their therapist. So it's always a really good idea to say, what are your thoughts on going to see your doctor about it? What are your thoughts on, actually there's some people at Smart Hub that do some counselling. What would be your thoughts on going and having a chat to one of those people? They might be available. I know there's some people there work at Smart Hub with some good counselling backgrounds. So that's where we've got to. We've done the ahas, we've done the feedback their own words to them, we've done the that must be really hard for you, I can't imagine what that would be like, what got you through this last time. That's the kind of formula that we're starting to follow. Now, we've got to get back to the business conversation we were having. Can we get back to talking about your finances or your kitchen or your, whatever it is that you were here to talk about? So moving that conversation is going to be much easier once that person feels like they've been listened to. If we try and do this too early, they're going to think, oh, wow, you're not interested in actually talking to me, are you? So we've got that rapport built. The person feels validated, the person feels heard through all those things that we've done in the previous slides. You'd have to segue that back in now to your business conversation. So I don't know what all the businesses are that someone here might be with, but let's just say a financial mortgage broker, just for example's sake. And someone's refinancing because of grief. We've had this happy story. We've had all that interesting stuff. So now you get back to, so he sounds like an absolutely wonderful husband. It sounds like you two had a great life together. Let's get back into how we can make this work for you now with this finance change that's brought on. Something that'll segue it back into the reason that you started the conversation. And that's going to depend on your business model. So just some other directions. If this person is starting to get bogged down, if you're trying to redirect and they're just coming back to a negative, back to a negative, back to a negative, we can always get that redirection to a more brighter form of conversation. So if you've done that little bit in the previous slides where we had that strength-based statement and you can't get them back out of it, we want to draw them up out of that down feeling that they might be bringing with them. I'm just going to say the vibe, that vibe that's low, and we want to start building that vibe up a little bit, get their vibration up a little bit happier, segue back into the business conversation. Because the last thing we want is them connecting our business conversation with a negative emotion. So if our business conversation can connect them with a positive emotion, more likely that the business relationship is going to be maintained. So, oh, wow, your dog was the main reason you stayed in that domestic relationship. Tell me more about your dog. How good was that? You're saying you like to spend more time with your mates and not your wife. That must be really hard for you. What do you get up to with your mates? They're starting to lift their mood a little bit. And again, talking to someone about this stuff might be really helpful. I know there's some really good people out there, and that might start lifting their vibe too. All right, so that's the end of the real body of the presentation that I wanted to give you guys. So hints and tips, becoming present and becoming mindful. Honestly, half your conversation is done. So the difference between me sitting on the computer and still going, oh yeah, that would have been hard. Yeah, wow, or dropping in and going, can you hear me again?
Yes.
Right. That must have been really difficult for you. That must have been really hard. I can see that's making you upset. That's a different conversation, isn't it? Between doing the, yeah, back on your computer screen. So dropping in, taking a moment just to, and it can be quick. What colour shirt is that person wearing? What colour is their hair? What colour are their eyes? What can I feel in this room right now? What can I smell? What can I hear? I'm here with you. And I'm here having this conversation with you. Half validated. Conversation's half done. Acknowledge their story and stick with minimal statements before talking. Always stick with a, wow, really? Ooh. Get that person a little bit more validated and I am hearing you. Then we start talking. And meanwhile, your head's going, what am I supposed to say? Oh, that's right. I'll stick to those slides that she said. Always suggest they seek some assistance. As I'm going to say a first aider, if you've done your mental health first aid course, which I happen to know an instructor for that course, if anyone's interested. Get them linked in with a professional, either their EAP at work, GP, another sort of professional that they might want to deal with. If you think they need immediate help, if you really think there is a risk, if they've dropped the bomb on you that they're too scared to go home right now because there's an imminent risk of violence or something that's going to occur, we can call either the mental health MH call, so the mental health crisis team if we feel that's in need, or we can call the police and we can ask for a welfare check on our person. We can also just call 000 or Lifeline, and we can ask for help. I've got this person who said this to me. What am I supposed to do now? Yeah, and the people there can give you some assistance, because the last thing we'd want is we go, oh yeah, okay, whatever, off you go home, and this person has then entered into a high risk situation. So if there's immediate help, keep them. And honestly, one of the easiest is just to ring Lifeline and ask. They'll have all the references and where you can send people. And they're trained helpers straight away. So if your head's going, I don't know what to say, here, quick, speak to someone that does, and they're on the phone to Lifeline. So if we are looking at referrals, if there's phone and internet referrals, I've got the Lifeline number there for you. There's a suicide callback service if this person has said something around taking their own life. 1-800-RESPECT is for domestic violence. Those helplines, there's there's the parents helpline, the men's line. Open Arms is for veterans, for military veterans helpline. That's the mental health crisis line there, 1300-MH call, if you feel your person is in need of mental health assistance. So there's an app that you can download. It's called Calm Care. That's a 3-hour suicide awareness course that I present. Is called Calm Care. It's a good little course, actually. It's a good product. They've got a free app that you can download, and if you have a look at it when you go onto the App Store, I think it's a green box with a C and a line going through it. And you can put in emergency phone numbers straight away of someone that the person can call. But on one of those is all of those helplines, and you just hit it inside the app and it rings automatically. So it's a really good little app. Oops, sorry. If there isn't like immediate need and this person can make an appointment to speak to someone, there's Relationships Australia. They do lots of different types of counselling, more around the domestic violence and parenting. There's also a child counsellor there. The counsellor's not a child, they see children. So VCSS is the Victims Counselling and Support Services. So that's, I just recently left that role. That's for anybody who has been a victim of a violent crime at any point in time and they live in Queensland. Free service, really good service. Probably going to be a bit of a wait list, but any sort of violent crime, including historical domestic violence, something that happened when you were a child, or you got assaulted from a break-in in your home. So any of those sorts of things, they can go for free counselling. Anglicare and Centacare, GP, I'm Symmetry Australia. I'm more along the lines of energy work. So you can see my little chakra things there behind me. Hypnotherapy. I do some Reiki and Reiki counselling and chakra energy work with relaxation massage. I'm really bad at talking about myself. So women's health is another one. They also see men. And that's for sexual assault, and male sexual assault also can go to Women's Health. And Lotus Place is for, momentarily forgot the correct word, but when there's been abuse at an institution, like if in the adoption, I've forgotten my words.
Yeah, institutional abuse, I think it would be called.
Thank you, that's the one. Yeah, so they're for institutional abuse. So lots of places that people can go to. And just at the end, just always remembering your own self-care, so your own follow-up. If someone has dropped some of these bombs on you, not where we wanted to be having these conversations in our life. So being able to do your own mindfulness, physical exercise. If you wanted to look up vagus nerve and oxytocin, if you do just a little bit of a Google on those, heaps of stuff will come forward, heaps of good stuff on YouTube. Anything that can trigger your vagus nerve will reduce your cortisol, which brings down your stress, increase your oxytocin, which also happens to be a stress hormone. So if there's any stress ever, you'll have adrenaline, cortisol, and oxytocin. We want to bump the oxytocin side of that and reduce the adrenaline cortisol side of that. So anything that's going to trigger your vagus nerve, which is what we were talking about, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, what's this thing called again? Your throat, your lungs, diaphragm, and gut. Anything that will trigger any of those points in your body will trigger the vagus nerve, which will increase your oxytocin and reduce your cortisol. Exercise does a lot. Meditation and mindfulness will do all of those things. Yoga. I personally am not a yoga person, but it's got some really good trauma-informed yoga. It is fantastic stuff. So that's the end of my actual presentation. I feel like I've done and just rattled everything off. But at the end of the day, if we go back to the hints and tips, half your job is done by dropping in and becoming mindful with that human that's talking to you. Forget the business conversation right now at this point in time. Listen, validate, find their strengths, link them in with someone that can give them further assistance, segue, lift the energy, segue back to your business conversation. So that's the take home from 40 minutes of me chattering to you.
That's wonderful. Linda, thank you so much. What I really liked about your presentation is you broke it down step by step. And I know that if people follow your advice, not only will they make the other person feel validated, they'll actually strengthen that relationship, which will strengthen the business relationship. And I really liked also that bit where you said you have to raise the vibration. You have to leave them feeling a little bit more positive so that they connect that positivity to your business and not like essentially form negative rapport with your business, which is not ideal. So I think what you shared is so practical and so valuable and broken down in very, very easy to follow steps. That was fantastic. Thank you so much. Now we're going to open for questions. So if you do have a question for Linda, or if you have an example that you'd like to share and ask more specific advice for, you have one of two choices. You can either type that into our chat and then I'll read the question out, or you can unmute yourself and speak to Linda. So anyone have any questions?
I do. I'm happy to.
Yes, Stephanie.
So I have found in the past, before you get to that stage of opening up, there can be some negative self-talk like, oh, I'm just so stupid, or I'm not very good at that. Do you address that behavior before they may open up, or is there something that you would suggest saying to that? Do you try and build that vibe there?
Yeah. Well, that's a really good question. And I think it might, one, depend on what kind of business conversation you're having with that person. Some of it also is going to be your own confidence in continuing if they do then drop something. So if you can have that confidence where someone says to me, oh, I'm just so terrible and awful at doing this. So me with technology, I am really awful at this. I never get this right. You can then address with, but I'm sure there's other things that you are very competent with. This is just one element of life. You could bring it back around to that. Does that kind of answer your question? It's going to depend on your confidence level.
Yeah, I know in the past, because I'm in a customer service type role where they've said, oh, I'm just so terrible at this. I'm like, well, that's why I'm here. I'm here to help so that we can move forward. But I just want to make sure that, you know, sometimes that still does continue. So I think I will take that on board of going, oh, I'm sure that, you know, there's some other good things that you're great at.
Yeah, and that's really good in terms that it validates, because often what we feel compelled to do is put a silver lining on it and go, oh no, you're not stupid. Well, of course they're not stupid, but your mind is going, but I'm really bad at this. So you're listening and validating at the same time, where you're saying, but I'm here to help you with this. So it's okay that you're not great at this particular one aspect. That's why I'm here. And I'm sure there's other things that you're really good at doing. So that's really well done.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Stephanie. That's a really good question. Any other questions?
Yeah, hi, Linda. Steve here. Linda, you presented this on a business conversation context. How would it be any different if it was an employer talking to an employee, or an employee raising an issue? Would you exactly the same process or anything different?
I would suggest it would still be a very similar process in terms of the ahas, don't talk, reflect back, because you've still got that built relationship where it's outside of your personal relationship. So it would be a matter of, where does my personal relationship start and end with this person, and where does my business relationship start and end with this person? So the only difference would possibly be that if there's any sort of performance management within that. So then I'd be referring back to HR and having a conversation around who is going to be my best person to further support us with this.
Thank you.
Another really great question. Any other questions? So while you're thinking, if you do have a question, please feel free to jump in. But I'd like to ask a question, Linda, around what you mentioned at the end. You mentioned the vagus nerve and oxytocin. And I think that's really interesting because it's the biology of stress, really. It's the biology, it's like the chemical reaction that happens in our bodies physiologically that makes us feel in a specific way, and then also triggers what we say and how we behave. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the vagus nerve, and about, you mentioned exercise and yoga and so forth, but just from a theoretical perspective, just give us a little bit more information around that, and also maybe oxytocin, if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. Yeah, sure. One of my most favourite subjects. So our brain, obviously, brain mind, whatever you want to call it, but the brain, if we're talking about that old lizard brain, but from when we were cavemen, we're still very much wired to have that fight, flight, freeze and fawn response. So there's 4 Fs now. When I'm scared, I tend to say a few Fs myself. But fight, flight, freeze and fawn are definitely the ones that we either have that real adrenaline rush where we need to get away from, we need to fight, we freeze like the little lizard does and drops his tail, or the fawn is the, yes, I will please you. If everything's good and fine, then, I won't get hurt. So that's the people-pleasing idea of stuff. That has a real adrenaline base to it. And when our adrenaline is high, our prefrontal cortex is pretty much disconnected because we're not thinking through consequences. We're not doing problem solving. We're in survival mode. If we're in survival mode for a long period of time, cortisol starts to rise. And that's when we can get some of those physical ailments that we talked about at that very first slide that accompany mental health. So in order to, and that's when we might be in an argument with someone and it'll be like, blur, we'll blurt something out and then we'll go, oh crap, I really shouldn't have said that, about 10 minutes later, because our adrenaline and cortisol has started to drop, our prefrontal cortex has started to open, and we're thinking of the consequences of what we said, which we weren't thinking about during the argument. We were just in fight, flight, survival. Let's say this stuff to try and get out of our situation. So if there's a way that we can engage our vagus nerve and trigger oxytocin, oxytocin is also a stress hormone in a stress response. And that's like the natural ecstasy of your body, let's say. It makes us want to reach out and be with others in order to help our stress. So that didn't develop until we were a little bit later on, the prefrontal cortex, sorry, didn't develop until later on outside of caveman era. And it's the bit that breaks in between us being our same thinking as our dog, let's say. So to open up the prefrontal cortex, increase our window of tolerance between fight, flight, freeze and fawn, and I need to think about my response, triggering the vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve. I don't know what the other 9 are, but it makes me sound smart knowing that one's the 10th. And it goes through the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, lungs, diaphragm, gut. Our gut is where serotonin is produced, comes back up with vagus nerve, and we've got nice serotonin in our brain for the feel goods. So anything that will trigger eyes, ears, nose, mouth, lungs, diaphragm, gut in a positive way will trigger the vagus nerve, increase oxytocin, open up that prefrontal cortex, and we come back into thinking mode. Hence, when we have that, someone drops the bomb of, well, actually, I might as well just go home and kill myself now if this business interaction isn't going to go well for me. Aha, hang on a minute. We're going to start going, what? Our adrenaline will rise because of our own shock. When we come back into that person and we just drop in and we become mindful, we see them, we smell our environment, we can feel what's on our skin. If we've got a chewy, we could pop a lolly in our mouth. We've got taste, we've got movement of the tongue, we've got swallowing. Big deep breath from your diaphragm will engage your gut as well. Our oxytocin will increase and our thinking will become clearer to be able to assist. The more you can tone your vagus nerve, it's like toning a muscle. The more you can tone it just through your normal behaviours, activities, you know, if you want to exercise and go to yoga every day, you'll tone your vagus nerve and your window of tolerance will increase and you'll be able to drop back into that prefrontal cortex thinking a lot quicker.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Okay, any other questions? I think you did a fantastic job. John, do you have a question? I see you've just come on. No, you're good. I'll give it 30 more seconds. Any other questions? It's always so tricky from my perspective to know whether I should be quiet or whether I should keep talking, because I know what it's like to be in the audience and you want to ask a question, but you're not sure, you're hesitant. And then, yeah, so I just want to give enough chance if anyone does have a question, or you could just pop it in the chat if you don't want to unmute yourself and I will read the question. I think as part of Mental Health Week, this is actually such a very, very important conversation to have and such an important skill. And I think even as a parent, you can use these same techniques with your kids, with your partner, and we underestimate the importance of making people feel heard and understood and validated. That actually is half the solution. And if you don't do that, then people will keep telling you what the problem is, until someone makes them feel heard and validated. And that really gets in the way of getting stuff done. Okay, I think we can call it a day. Linda, you were absolutely marvelous. I'm just looking through the chat and we have a lot of great presentation. Great, thank you so much for what you shared today. So on behalf of myself, the Smart Hub, and all of the people on the call today, Linda, you did amazingly. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your insight and your tips and your tricks. And I think we'll all take away something very practical that we can implement straight away. So really do appreciate it. Please, John, do you want to speak?
No, I was just saying thank you. Phil.
Okay, awesome. Please do join us again for our November Lunch and Learn. Our November Lunch and Learn will be all about selling a business, how to think about exiting a business when you start a business, and also in existing businesses, how to think about the structure and everything you need to have in place if you are considering exiting that business or selling that business. Also, if you're interested in buying a business, that's also a really great lunch and learn for you to participate in. So keep an eye on your inboxes and also on our Facebook page for the marketing. Thank you so much for joining us for today's lunch and learn, and we'll see you again in November. See you later.